Welcome all friends, those who are joining us here and also those who are joining us on the internet. As Michelle said, this is the last talk in this series, and we are going to explore this model of theosophy of human beings and cosmos as a multi-dimensional entity. Both the cosmos and human beings are regarded as entities, if we use that word in a general way. And they are, as I said, multi-dimensional, so not just what we see with our senses. Let me recap what we have seen so far. We have explored how the universe came about. We have seen that everything came from the unity. There is a single nature, a single reality or ground that produces everything in the universe, but not only produces it, it is everything in the universe. So ultimately speaking, everything is just a different manifestation of the oneness. Now, for the oneness to show different aspects, we need a duality. That we have seen is illusory in the sense that it lasts for a time and then everything goes back to the original unity. But while the universe is manifested, we have this primordial duality between what we can call spirit and matter, or consciousness and form. Now, when this oneness shows these two polarities, a third element appears, because spirit and matter are related. We could say maybe, spirit and matter are related through consciousness. Spirit being the ultimate reality in us, matter being our body, and consciousness is the manifestation of that ultimate reality through the body. What comes out of that is what we call consciousness. Or we can call this triplicity as spirit, matter, and energy. All triplicities that you can think of come from this archetypal triplicity, which is the model for all the trinities and triads of the different religions. In Christianity we have Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but also we have in Hinduism Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva or Mahadeva, and we have in different traditions this triplicity. So, for example, Pythagoras used to talk about the one as the monad coming from monas, which means one, and then he would say that the first manifested figure is a triangle. So he said the duality is almost non-existent, because as soon as you have two elements, the relationship between the two appears. So he would say from the one you go to the triplicity, which is the first geometrical figure that we have. We have the dot, the line, and the first figure is a triangle. So we have seen also that from this triplicity we come to 7 elements. These 7 elements are actually plus 1 6. As I'm going to show you. We explored this in the first talk. Let's suppose that this triplicity, let us draw this triangle downwards, because we are talking about the process of manifestation. So it's coming down symbolically. So we have the spirit, we have matter, and we have the cosmic energy. So if we combine these 3 elements, we have seen that the combination of the 3 elements gives like 7 basic foundations for the universe. So let's suppose we have a realm or a plane, a dimension, where spirit is predominant, then the aspect of energy follows, and finally there is some matter there. This becomes grosser, denser, and we have the spirit, for example, matter and energy. Then another combination is energy, spirit, and matter, or energy, matter, and spirit, or matter, spirit, energy, matter, energy, spirit. This would be where matter is predominant and energy is not so predominant, but they are having its role, and spirit seems to be like clouded by matter and energy. And this could be a good description, symbolical description of the physical plane. We can perceive matter. We have discovered the aspect of energy through science, and the spirit, the consciousness that is behind, is harder to realize on the physical plane. So we have here 6 elements, but all this comes from, there is one more possible combination, which is where spirit, matter, and energy are in a state of equilibrium. That is the homogeneous source of everything else. So that's why, although we talk about 7 planes, we are talking about really of a homogeneous plane, and then 6 more planes of differentiation. So this is more or less how theosophy describes the progression from the one to the multiplicity. Or within each one of these dimensions, we have, all the diversity and multiplicity that we know of. So let us explore today this aspect, the aspect of the 7 dimensions. Let us take our planet. The idea is that these 7 dimensions are at the cosmic level, encompassing the whole universe, and they are also, as a reflection, a lower reflection, our planet has also 7 dimensions, and as a lower reflection of that, human beings have a 7 dimensions. So let us take our planet, for example, and describe these dimensions, or planes as they are called in theosophy. So first we have what we call the physical plane. Physical plane is the plane we can perceive through our senses. So the plane we are aware of right now. This is the densest of all the planes, the lowest of the 7 planes. Now, theosophy postulates that there is like a subtle plane, a subtle dimension, which, all the diagrams are just symbolic. So we usually draw this as if they were layers, all these different planes, but they are all interpenetrating. When a clairvoyant, a person that is able to see different levels of these different dimensions, let's say, when a clairvoyant sees a person, he or she can see the physical body and sees that there is some kind of matter, substance, energy that goes further than the physical body. The idea being that all these subtler dimensions are like not so dense or constricted to the form. So we can characterize that as a plane that is including the physical, but is, goes beyond the physical at the level of space. Again, this is just a diagram. And that dimension or plane is usually called astral, the astral plane. Astral comes from stars. It means starry, which is an allusion to the fact that the astral plane is shining in itself. On the astral plane, when a person is conscious on this dimension, this plane, there is no light, there is no day or night. The matter itself is self-illuminating. So that's why mystics in the West have called this plane astral. This is a plane, okay, we'll talk about that later. So above that, or subtler than that, there is another plane that in theosophy is called the mental plane. Mental plane. This astral plane is also sometimes called emotional. We are going to see how all this fits with the human being, but I think you can already see more or less how this goes. So subtler than this, more encompassing, is another plane that the name that we use in theosophy, it comes from the Sanskrit. So we could call it Buddhic plane. The word Buddhic comes from the Sanskrit root Bud, which means enlightened, which means awakened. And this is the same root from which the word Buddha comes, Buddha being the enlightened one or the awakened one. So this plane is called Buddhic in theosophy. Then we have a higher plane that is called Atmic. This is again comes from a Sanskrit word that is Atman. Atman means the self. Self in the sense of the ultimate self. So we have 5 planes here. And then there are 2 other planes higher than that, which they are not very much concerned with human evolution, as we are going to see. Annie Besant and Leadbeater used to call them Anupadaka and Adi. These are Sanskrit words. Again, Adi means the highest. Anupadaka means the one that appears without being generated. In the sense, appears spontaneously. It means parentless. And there is a reason why this plane is called like that. It's not really a production, but it's a spontaneous manifestation of Adi. But we are not going to go into this tonight. So this is the general idea. There are these 7 dimensions, and we human beings have also 7 dimensions, although our 7 dimensions are developed within these 5 planes. These 2 planes are belong to what we could call the deity or the logos. The deity not so much in the Christian sense of as an entity, but as the source of everything. So if you see, if you remember what we talked in the first talks, this would be related to, the first logos, the second logos, and manifestation begins really on the 3rd plane, which is the 3rd logos. These are the symbols that we discussed in our first talk. So here again we repeat the same pattern here. There are 2 planes which are beyond manifestation, and manifestation begins on the 3rd one. So for human beings, there are 2 planes that are beyond the reach of a normal human being, and the universe for a human being begins on the 3rd plane, which is the Atmic plane. So it's following more or less that same pattern. So let us now see how we fit in this diagram. I think it would be good if I erase some of it. Okay, we'll see if it gets too confusing. We will erase something. So we have a physical body. That's the physical body that. Yeah, I can use a different color. We have the physical body, which is the one we perceive. Now, in theosophy, it is said that our physical body is more than what we perceive right now. We are not talking about, bodies that are beyond the physical. Within the physical plane, we have what it is called the dense body. So we could call it dense body. And then we have what is called, this body is called in different ways, but we can call it etheric body. The etheric body is like a subtle counterpart of the physical body through which life or the prana or the chi flows. All the energy healing that is based on using our hands and passes with the hands, the idea is that what we are doing is moving the energy through the etheric body, and then we can direct that energy to a person or to different things. Also in martial arts, many of the martial arts, especially in the East, they many times have this kind of visualization where all the energy will go to the fist. And the idea is that with a very small, punch to something, what you are really doing is sending all that energy to the thing you are punching. So the idea, what I mean with all this is that there is in the tradition this idea that we have the possibility of direct energy. This etheric body is like the bridge between the energy that is non-material and the physical body that is material. So the etheric body is like a bridge because it is semi-material in a sense. So a bridge is something that has to share the nature of both things that it is bridging. So it is material enough to be in touch with the physical body and non-material enough to be in touch with the energy. So, but both of them are part of the physical body. Then it is said that we have, when the clairvoyants see a person, they see that there is like an aura around the person. It's like some kind of light, usually it is seen, and it's a kind of energy or subtle matter. We really don't have words in the normal language for this. But this is what we call the emotional body. Every emotion that we feel is actually either generated or transmitted through the emotional body. So if we, for example, have a state of anger, a person that can see the emotional body would see all the disturbance on our emotional body, on our aura. The different emotions are seen as different colors. Anger is usually seen as red and like lightning, energy. Peace is seen as blue by most people, and love is seen more or less like pinkish. So the idea is that every emotion produces a particular kind of vibration which people can perceive as colors. And they are objective things. In our normal scientific view, we think that emotions and thoughts are just subjective. It's something that is happening, somewhere inside our body, but just a product of hormones and biochemical reactions. In theosophy, we say that the emotions happen on our emotional body and they are transmitted to the physical body. So if you damage the brain, for example, and the brain cannot receive the emotions, you won't see the body responding to emotions. But that doesn't mean that the person in its wholeness is not feeling any emotions. It's just not able to transmit it to the physical body. Just like if you have a TV And if you break anything inside the TV is not going to show any image. That doesn't mean that the electromagnetic waves that come from the broadcasting station are not there. You are just breaking what has to translate those into images. So if the brain is not working, that doesn't mean that thoughts or emotions are not there. It's only that the mechanism is broken to show it on the physical plane. So in the same way, we have a subtler body that is called the mental body. Again, here we have what we call our thoughts, our imagination, our reasoning powers. They all happen through our mental body, just like what happens through the emotions. Now, every time we think or we have a feeling, since these planes have a kind of matter or energy, call it however you want, every time we feel or think, we are moving that energy and we are sending that energy out. Just in the same way that when we move, we are producing an action on the physical plane. When we feel, we are producing an action on the emotional plane. And when we think, the same on the mental plane. These are many times called thought forms. And this is the basis for the idea that you can help somebody in meditation or with prayers, because we are sending our thoughts to a person, for example, or to a place, to a situation. So we have the power to a certain extent to help a little through our meditation. A little or much, it depends on how powerful our emotions and thoughts are. And with powerful, I mean how much will we have to produce a powerful, influence that can be used for good or for ill. What we call sorcery or, these curses, they are using exactly the same principles. They are trying to send certain energy to a place or to a person. And the idea is that energy will help or impair something if the recipient can respond to that energy. So, for example, if we send goodwill to a person, that will help the person only to the extent that the person can receive that goodwill. If somebody sends ill will to a person, that will affect the person only to the extent that the person will respond to ill will. So if the emotion the person usually has as part of his or her emotions, ill will, his or her emotional body will readily respond to that emotion, because we are feeding constantly that. So we are forming our emotional body to express that kind of emotion. So when we get close to people who have ill will, we may be affected by them. Now, if we try to keep purer emotions and purer thoughts, then that vibration is not perceived by us. So ill will wouldn't affect us, even if somebody is sending it, specifically to a person. So this shows us that it is important, and we are going to develop all this in more depth as the series advances. But this shows us that in the same way that according to what we eat, we build our physical body, according to what we feel and think, we build our emotional and mental bodies. So, of course, if we don't eat well, we cannot expect to have a good physical body. And the same happens with the mental and emotional body. So these 3 or 4 bodies are what we call our personality. This is our external being. This is what we are for one life period. We are born and we form a new dense body, a new etheric body, a new emotional body, and a new mental body. When we die, The dense body is the first one that dissolves, then the etheric body, then there are some post-mortem processes that we are going to see. The emotional body dissolves, and finally the mental body dissolves also. So this is the transient aspect of human beings, which, as I said, they are called the personality. So we can maybe write here. Let me erase these two. We can call the personality. Now, in the same way that on the physical plane we have two bodies, on the mental plane we also have two bodies. The lower mental plane forms, that means like the densest part of the mental plane forms the mental body. The subtler part of the mental plane forms what is sometimes called the causal body. In Hinduism, they call it Karana Sharira, which means the same. Karana is like causal, and Sharira is the vehicle of consciousness. This causal body is what we could call, the soul. This causal body is what reincarnates, which is, in the wheel of reincarnation. We are going to see this also more in detail in the future. This causal body is always there, and as all these bodies dissolved, the lower bodies dissolved, consciousness retreats to the causal body. So this is the reincarnating entity. This is also the source of our sense of I-ness. This is what gives us the sense of I am an entity, I am somebody. When consciousness is on the causal body, there is a pure sense of being, of existing. When consciousness goes down to the lower bodies, that pure sense of being becomes identified with the personality, with this mind, with these emotions, and this body. So that sense of existing that was there, now it says, I am this personality. This sense of existing at the level of the causal body that was unlimited, and it wasn't really separated from the rest, now becomes restricted and says, I am this, only this, and you are different. Above this, we have these two planes, Atmic and Buddhic. We don't have any more bodies on this level because we are beyond the planes of form. So we have what in theosophy is called principles. I don't want to go too much into the distinction between bodies and principles, but we can say it's just consciousness. We see that from the very beginning, if there is spirit, there is matter also. If there is consciousness, there is a kind of form. But a body is something that is organized. The vehicles of consciousness of Atma and Buddhi, in Vedanta, for example, they are called koshas. It's a Sanskrit word that means like sheaths. So they are like vestures more than bodies. And these principles are called Buddhi and Atman. This Atman is the ultimate self. Now that self is universal. It's not that you have your Atman, I have my Atman. This self is the self of everything in the universe. And Buddhi is like the seed of enlightenment, the seed of truth. In theosophy, many times we talk about Buddhi as spiritual intuition, in the sense that this is a wisdom that can really perceive what all this is about. Our mind perceives reflections. It is through this faculty of Buddhi that we can really see what the universe is about, so to say. This is a direct perception. It's not a perception through thinking or any process of reasoning. So sometimes when in meditation or when studying or even in our daily living, we realize something, we realize the truth of something, it is said that that insight comes from Buddhi. So these two principles, Atma and Buddhi, yeah, I don't know if we have, let me see. These two principles, okay, are called the monad. Remember, monad means one. Why is it, formed by two principles? Well, because actually, the monad is Buddhi, and Buddhi is reflecting Atman. Atman is beyond anything, everything. Atman is like the light that comes from the sun. Whatever we do here on earth cannot affect the sun. It's beyond us. But we can use the light of the sun to do different things. Let's suppose this room is dark. And there is, we have some windows here, but there is another room that has no windows. So we can use mirrors to bring the light of the sun, to the other room. Buddhi would be like the mirror that we are using to reflect Atman. And that light that we are taking to the dark room is what we call the monad. That light comes from the reflection of Atma in Buddhi, the reflection of the sun in the mirror. So that's why this is called the monad and the oneness in human beings, although we talk about these being two principles. So we have the monad, we have, which is Atma and Buddhi, and the monad plus the soul, let's say, forms what we call the individuality. So we have the personality, which is transient, and the individuality, which is eternal. Again, eternal, technically speaking, doesn't mean everlasting. Eternal means it will last as long as the universe lasts. But remember that we talked in one of our previous talks that the universe appears and disappears in a cyclic way. So this individuality will persist through the whole round of evolution, but then eventually will be absorbed in the one. So the whole idea in the process of evolution, and we are going to have a whole series on evolution, is that this individuality, which begins by being just a universal self, Atman is universal, we said. Buddhi is also universal. Buddhi, again, we all share Buddhi. And we said that the origin of our sense of I-ness is at the level of the mind. Actually, it's at the level of the higher mind, the sense of I-ness. So the idea is that this causal body, this soul, can assimilate Atma and Buddhi, can purify itself to become a perfect mirror of Atman and Buddhi. When that happens, we have what we call an enlightened being. Because this enlightened being is just a vehicle for the manifestation of the universal self. Now, this universal self is manifesting through a particular center of consciousness. But it is nevertheless the universal self. Another enlightened being will manifest the same universal self through that particular set of vehicles. So what happens is that the universal self manifests in different ways. Right now, the universal self is always there, but when we talk about manifesting, we are talking about manifesting in a self-conscious way. It's a complex subject. We are going to deal with that when talking about evolution. But the point is that the whole idea of this process of evolution is that by the process of reincarnation, this causal body begins to develop so that it can reflect without distortion the universal self. And then the universal self can manifest in a self-conscious way on all the planes in the universe. So that's more or less the model that Theosophy proposes, with these 7 planes and the 7 principles. If you see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 principles within the 5 lower planes. So based on this will be basic for all our further studies in everything, in evolution, on the spiritual path, the different practices. So this is more or less like the basis for that. As usually, we can open up now to comments or to questions about this. I'll wait for the mic.
Okay. The person has 2 parts. The personality is one part, and individuality is the other part. That's what's broken down there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the 3 higher principles, sometimes called the higher triad, which resembles, this higher triad is the individuality, and the 4 lower principles, which in Theosophy is many times called the lower quaternary, is the personality.
This may be a little bit off, but have you heard of certain brain illnesses or damage that inhibits the emotional aspect of people's lives? And when faced with decisions, these people mull over which one, should I take this one or that one, because they have no sense of what really, feels good, or they can't really use the emotional structure to keep their lives in a particular direction. They get paralyzed. Do they still have an astral body that's working, or is it just that the brain is not picking that up, and so in the physical world down here in the everyday day-to-day life, then they're just going to have to struggle?
Yeah, I guess it can be different things, and of course this is a guess. All these things are very complex. But one possibility could be that the physical body, simply the connection between the physical body and the emotional body, is not working properly. And the other possibility that I can think of is that the emotional body itself is not developed. There are several reasons for this. Sometimes the emotional body has like dead points, where a clairvoyant can see that the energy doesn't flow through that part. So it's like a dead emotional or astral matter that is there. So that aspect cannot respond to the environment, and therefore the physical body won't be able to feel. Remember that matter is like the vehicle to convey whatever is outside to consciousness. If the astral or emotional matter is not working, then consciousness has no way to see what is going on outside at that particular level. So it could be that something happened on the emotional body that is producing this block, or it could be that the emotional body itself is very little developed. There is this idea that we develop our emotional body through all the lives and different lives, taking into account the theory of reincarnation. And there is an atom in the emotional body, which is sometimes called the permanent atom. Not atom as the one in science. We are talking about subtle matter. There is an atom that is the one that learns how to respond to things. Learns is symbolic. Everything that we feel has an impact on that particular atom. And that atom begins to learn to respond to vibrations, or develop the ability to respond to vibrations. So when the person dies, everything is dissolved but these atoms. When the soul incarnates again, the atom that was the permanent atom that was dormant begins to be active again and attract emotional matter and build an emotional body similar to the previous one. So if that emotional permanent atom is not developed, has not for some reason gone through many experiences, then there is nothing inside that can respond to the outside. So anyway, by being exposed to situations, the permanent atom begins to acquire the ability to respond. So in the next life, now that atom will be able to respond to situations that wasn't able to, in the previous life. So those would be my guesses, but it's just like medicine. You have a symptom, it can be because of many things. I'm just giving a few guesses.
Can you touched on part of, can you tell us as far as service, meditation, and study, how to bridge that gap between the personality and the individuality? Is that?
Well, yeah, that we will talk about that, in the future in the series, but that has to do with, what is it that unites the individuality and the personality? It's the mental plane. On the mental plane, we have the causal body that belongs to the individuality and the mental body that belongs to the personality. Between the two of them, there is a connection that is sometimes called in theosophy antahkarana.
Thanks.
It's antahkarana. The idea is that is like a bridge between the higher mind and the lower mind. This bridge can be activated whenever we have a spiritual feeling, thought, or action. By spiritual, I mean something that is in tune with the individuality, something that is in tune with a pure sense of I-ness, not a selfish sense of I-ness, or something that is in tune with this wisdom nature that is in us, or something that is in tune with the universal self. So the antahkarana is an aspect of the lower mind, the mental body, which is always in tune with the higher. Every time that we do something related to the spiritual, we begin to activate the antahkarana, or to build this bridge. So the practices like meditation, study, service are all meant, or one of the aims is to generate this bridge that can allow us to raise our consciousness to the spiritual aspect of our nature. But again, if I'm meditating for selfish reasons, because I want to develop powers, or I want to be happier and I don't care about other people, that is not really activating the antahkarana. I'm doing something only for my personal welfare, which is more or less the same as if I go and steal something for my own welfare. I mean, of course, it's not the same to meditate for selfish reasons and to steal, but my point is that we are still in the realm of self-centered attitudes. To generate the antahkarana, to activate it or awaken it, we need really unselfish actions or emotions or thoughts. And that's the purpose of the spiritual life itself. Whenever whatever little thing you do, when you sacrifice yourself for the greater good, that is activating the antahkarana. Even in little things, you don't eat the last piece of cake because you know that this other person wants it. It's an unselfish act.
Right. Now, as far as meditation, though, give a specific example to meditate on something more spiritual, something more.
No, you can. There are many techniques of meditation. We are going to see them.
Right.
But you can meditate on virtues. You can meditate on unity. You can meditate trying to understand spiritual truths. You can meditate trying to discover who you really are, this pure sense of I-ness and beyond. So whatever you do in meditation like that is really for a spiritual purpose, then that would be part of the spiritual path.
And then study, how do you study spiritually? I mean, I know you study spiritual material, but again, it's the attitude or the intention that you go in with gathering knowledge or...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to say?
No, I want you to say.
No, because, that's the idea. I mean, if you study just because you want to seem wise or smart or just out of intellectual desire, it's okay, but it's not really activating your higher nature. Now, if you study because you want really to understand what life is about with a sense of spiritual aspiration or religious intention or whatever way you want to say it, that will activate the Now, it doesn't mean, if a person begins to study spiritual material, even out of selfish reasons, the very study or the very meditation can purify the motivation of the person. We always have some aspect of ourselves that is more self-centered. My emotional life is too complex, or I don't like it and I want to meditate to get more peace. Well, that's normal. Now, there is a point, we have to know that is a short, term aim. I need to have certain balance in my life. But if that becomes, again, a source of self-gratification, then that will stop there and it's not really going to serve a spiritual purpose. Now, if I begin there, but then I purify my motivation and I study and think and try to act in a more unselfish way, then that meditation was setting a foundation for something beyond. So I'm not meaning that unless you are perfectly unselfish, nothing of this matters. What I'm trying to point out is a direction where we have to head.
And I think what I'm trying to get at, when I found out that, that to study doesn't necessarily mean intellectual study. If I study myself, or if I'm really working on myself in order to be a better person, or if I'm pondering on a problem, say with my kids, and I'm really trying to find an answer, those are things that are going to bridge that gap there. Mm-hmm. If I'm meditating, to help others, that's something. Because I think for me, I thought that you can't bridge that gap in your regular life. You have to come to a center and be more spiritual. But it really was interesting or helpful for me to know that, that those three pillars, study, meditation, and service, there were ways to bridge that gap in stuff that I can do every day.
Yeah. And it has to be there.
Right. If I'm folding the clothes, I'm paying attention to what I'm doing and I'm folding them perfectly. Or if I'm sending an email, instead of having a pre-written name on it, I write my name out and I do it consciously. Just things like those are things that I found for me were helpful, that I could do effortlessly.
I think you're doing more than you think, and that is, if you're folding your kids' clothes for your kids, that's it.
Right.
If you're learning something to teach other people, that's it.
Right. That's what's helpful for me.
Yeah, and also we have to see all this in the bigger perspective. It's not that every single act will have a direct aim for that to be useful to somebody else. But the tone of our life has to go into that direction. Then when we are trying to solve a problem that we have, we are doing it to solve the problem, but also since the whole tone of our life is gearing towards trying to realize our unity with the whole and trying to help in the little ways that we want. So that also becomes an unselfish attitude or action, because then you solve your problem, and that gives you a little more wisdom that will help you in your process of helping.
Right.
You know, and again, when we say help, we don't have to think being saviors of humanity. You know, helping the little things.
Right.
Just not being so self-centered.
Right, and like the service to humanity, I thought I had to, start a nonprofit organization or feed the homeless, and I couldn't find time to that, so I was panicking, thinking I'm not doing my service for humanity. But when I found out that just raising children or trying to raise them in a right manner was service, that took a huge burden off of me. So just that was very helpful for me.
The word that gets in the way is judgment. I'm always judging judging oneself too harshly. That gets in the way, thinking I'm not doing enough, I need to do more. And also in studying, they say to read a little bit, not 60 pages at one time, just a small amount, put the book down and maybe read something with a different subject matter and then come back. So not to overload.
Yeah, like everything, the middle path is what is important. It seems that as a general rule, women tend to be more self-critical, maybe too much. Men tend to be non-self-critical, maybe too little self. We have to get to a point of balance, because any extreme is as bad as the other. One extreme is as bad as the other. If we are too self-critical, that will produce stop the right action. If we are not self-critical, that also won't allow us to do the right thing. So.
Okay, there's a couple questions on the internet, and I want to address one first from Isabella. The 3 questions she asks are basically 3 complete lectures in themselves. So I don't want her to think we're ignoring her. What is the purpose of evolution? What is beyond enlightenment? And in the Upanishads, it says, "I am hidden deep in the cave of your heart." What is it? So
we are going to deal with the purpose of evolution in the next series that will be on evolution. I said something, about the idea of realizing the universal self, but we are going to go more in detail into that. Then the second question.
Okay.
No. She has 3 questions.
Right.
So the last question was about the divinity hiding in the heart, which is, again, when talking about meditation, we are going to talk about that. But the idea is that each one of our organs have a correspondence with some of these principles. So the heart is traditionally seen in connection to Buddhi. So meditating on the heart, or actually meditating in the heart, it's a complex technique. I don't know if complex, but there are certain things that we have to be clear about. But meditating in the heart is said to be a way to connect to Buddhi that works with some people. And the second question was?
What is beyond enlightenment?
Well, the day I get enlightened, I will be able to answer that, but Ed says that life is beyond enlightenment. In theosophy, there is always something beyond. We talk about nirvana, and then there is a paranirvana or parinirvana, which is a nirvana that is beyond nirvana. The idea is that what we call enlightenment is seeing the truth about this set of planes, but then consciousness transcends those planes, and in the theosophical model, we come out to a wider universe or deeper universe.
Okay. How can we improve our emotional body in daily life?
Yeah, as we said, it's very similar to the physical body. If we want to be, a sport person, we need to eat well, we need to give a good rest to the body, we need to, keep it healthy and train. And then we will be able to do things that normal people can't at the physical level. So in the same way, our emotional body is kept healthy by having healthy emotions, by having times of rest, which can be afforded by meditation. For example, if we can devote a few minutes of meditation, that could be a place to, slow down our emotions, or walking outside, or being in silence in a park. It's good if we can find some moments of rest. Sometimes our hectic life and responsibilities don't afford, or don't allow us to have a lot of this time. But it helps the emotional aspects. But basically, I would say trying to work on our emotions, so that the emotions that are more related with, we all know, with hate or anger or this and that, can little by little have less of a place in our consciousness. And that is not easy to do. In fact, it's in part the purpose of life, So just by living the spiritual life, our emotions, little by little, begin to be more poised, and try to. Something that I think helps also is trying to engage in activities where we are doing things for a greater good, and we are not so self-centered. Because many times the emotional problem is one of self-centeredness. We are too focused on ourselves, and we see everything out of perspective. So many times, as a practical thing, it's good to engage in whatever you can, where you are doing something for a greater good. Or even if you have, you are too busy raising your kids, but if you can take it in that way, as a service, then that would be also part of something that can help your emotional nature.
Okay, last question. In 30 seconds, can you explain more about Adi and Anupadika?
Well, I don't know how meaningful that is to us. I mean, I don't mean that we shouldn't study these things, but the idea is that the plane of Adi is the highest, the absolute reality is beyond everything. So it's many times he said it is the space that contains all the different planes. So it would be like the whiteboard. Now, Adi is like the first differentiation within the absolute reality. So this is the highest reality that is in the universe that is not the absolute reality. It is said that this is the place of the first logos. The first logos is the unmanifested logos, if you have seen the first talk or the second talk that we had. And this is the hidden God. This is the Godhead of some of the mystics. Now, the Anupadaka plane is like the seed of, let us draw a triangle inside, is what we could call the seed of all a human being. I don't want to use technical terms, that's why I'm hesitating. But ultimately speaking, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, or the mental, all that is an expression of this seed, which is what we really are, even beyond Atman. But yeah, to explain the purpose or the nature of those planes, I would have to give a whole talk.
Whole lecture.
So usually what it is said is that these are the planes of the logos, or the logoi. Logoi is the plural. This is the first logos, this is the second logos. and the higher part of the Atmic plane is the third logos. So those are divine planes, which are beyond the human experience at this point in evolution.